Danny Carter stared at the training scores on his tablet and felt his stomach drop. Dead last again. 24 years old, and he could not even keep up with the basic military drills that every other crew member on the Aurora's Edge passed with ease. He set the tablet down on his small desk and rubbed his tired eyes. The ship hummed around him as it moved through deep space toward their target planet. Danny had been assigned to this mission as a communications specialist, but he knew the real reason he was here. Someone in command had made a mistake. There were dozens of better qualified people who should have taken his place on this important exploration mission. A knock came at his door. Danny opened it to find Jake Morris standing in the hallway. Jake was the tactical officer and everything. Danny was not. Tall, strong, confident, and respected by everyone on the ship. Jake looked down at Danny with barely hidden frustration. Captain Brooks wants all crew members in the training bay in 10 minutes, Jake said. We are running another combat simulation before we reach the planet. Danny nodded and tried to hide his dread. Combat simulations were the worst. While other crew members moved like trained soldiers, Danny always seemed to trip over his own feet. He had passed basic training by the smallest possible margin, and only because his instructors took pity on him. Try not to get us all killed this time, Jake said before walking away. Danny changed into his training gear and made his way to the training bay. The other crew members were already there, checking their equipment and talking in small groups. Captain Lisa Brooks stood at the front of the room, her presence commanding immediate attention. She was everything a starship captain should be, smart and tough and absolutely fearless. Today we practice boarding actions, Captain Brooks announced. The planet we are approaching has unknown dangers, and we need to be ready for anything. Danny took his place with the rest of the team. Beside him stood Amy Rodriguez, the ship's pilot, who could fly anything with engines and make it look easy. Dr. Helen Martinez, the xenorchaeologist, was also part of the team. She was the only person on the ship who treated Danny like he belonged. Here, the simulation began, and immediately Danny fell behind. The team moved through a mock alien ship layout, clearing rooms and responding to threats. Danny's reactions were too slow, and his aim was terrible. When a holographic enemy appeared in front of him, he hesitated just long enough for Jake to push past him and eliminate the threat. Stay focused, Carter, Captain Brooks called out, but Danny could hear the disappointment in her voice. The simulation continued, and Danny tried his best, but everything went wrong. He triggered an alarm by accident, missed several easy targets, and at one point got so turned around that he ended up pointing his weapon at Amy instead of the enemy. The simulation ended with the team completing their objectives, but Danny knew he had been more of a burden than a help. After the exercise, the crew members dispersed quickly. Danny lingered behind, picking up equipment and trying to avoid eye contact with anyone. Dr. Martinez approached him with a kind smile. Do not let them get to you, she said softly. You have skills they do not understand yet. Like what? Danny asked. I cannot shoot straight, I cannot fight, and I move like I have 2 left feet. You see patterns others miss, Dr. Martinez replied. Remember when you helped me decode those alien transmissions last month? You found connections in the language that took my computer weeks to figure out. Danny appreciated her kindness, but it did not change the facts. In a few days, they would reach the planet and begin exploring ancient alien ruins. The away teams would need soldiers and scientists, people who could handle themselves in dangerous situations. Danny would probably end up staying on the ship, monitoring communications while everyone else made history. That evening, Danny sat alone in the mess hall, picking at his dinner. Through the large windows, he could see stars streaming past as the ship traveled at faster than light speed. Somewhere out there was their destination, a planet called Kepler 442b, that had been sending out mysterious energy signals for the past year. The signals were unlike anything humans had ever detected before. They seemed to pulse in complex patterns that suggested intelligence, but they were far too old to come from any known civilization. Some scientists thought they might be automatic broadcasts from an ancient alien outpost. Others believed they were natural phenomena that only looked artificial. Danny had spent hours studying the signal data, and he was sure there was something important hidden in the patterns. The pulses reminded him of language, like someone was trying to communicate across vast distances of space and time. But when he had shared his ideas with the science team, they had politely dismissed his theories. Jake Morris walked into the mess hall with several other crew members. They sat at a table across the room and began talking in low voices. Danny caught fragments of their conversation and realized they were discussing him. Command must have lost their minds assigning him to this mission, one of them said. He is going to get someone killed, Jake replied. Mark my words, Carter will mess up when we need him most. Danny finished his meal quickly and returned to his quarters. He lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling, wondering if they were right. Maybe he really did not belong here among these exceptional people. Maybe the best thing he could do was volunteer to stay on the ship and let the real professionals handle the dangerous work. Tomorrow, they would arrive at Kepler 442b and begin the most important exploration mission in human history. Danny just hoped he would not ruin everything for everyone else. The Aurora's edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder that Danny felt through his bones. He pressed his face against the small window in his quarters and got his first look at Kepler 442b. The planet hung in space like a blue-green jewel, but something about it seemed wrong. The continents were covered with geometric patterns that were clearly not natural. Captain Brooks called all crew members to the main briefing room. The large screen at the front showed detailed scans of the planet's surface. Massive crystalline structures rose from the ground in perfect mathematical arrangements. Some were as tall as mountains and others spread across areas the size of cities. These structures are definitely artificial, Dr. Martinez explained to the assembled crew. But they are older than anything we have ever discovered. Our dating equipment suggests they were built millions of years ago, possibly longer. Danny studied the images and felt something strange stirring in his mind. The patterns in the crystal formations seemed familiar somehow, like he had seen them before in dreams he could not quite remember. The geometric shapes hurt his eyes to look at directly, but he could not stop staring at them. The energy signals are coming from this central complex, Captain Brooks said, pointing to a cluster of the largest structures. We will land nearby and establish a base camp. Away teams will explore the ruins and try to determine their purpose. Jake Morris raised his hand. What about security, Captain? We have no idea what we might encounter down there. The planet appears to be completely dead, Captain Brooks replied. No life signs, no atmosphere that could support hostile organisms. But we will take full precautions anyway. Danny wanted to speak up, to tell them that something about the planet felt alive to him, despite what the scanners showed. But he knew they would just dismiss his feelings as imagination. He was the communications specialist, not a scientist or a soldier. His job was to monitor radio frequencies and maintain contact with Earth. The ship entered orbit and prepared for landing. Danny checked and rechecked his communication equipment, making sure everything was working perfectly. He could not afford any mistakes that might cut off their contact with home. The landing was smooth, and within an hour they had established a camp near the largest crystal formation. Captain Brooks selected the first away team. Jake Morris would handle security. Dr. Martinez would lead the scientific analysis. Amy Rodriguez would pilot their shuttle, and 3 other specialists would assist. Danny was assigned to stay at base camp and monitor communications, just as he had expected. I want constant contact every 30 minutes, Captain Brooks told the away team. If anything goes wrong, get back to base immediately. Danny watched through binoculars as the team approached the main crystal complex. The structures were even more impressive up close, rising hundreds of meters into the sky and pulsing with faint internal light. The geometric patterns seemed to shift and change when he was not looking directly at them. Hours passed with routine reports from the away team. They found corridors and chambers inside the structures, but no signs of the beings who had built them. Everything was perfectly preserved, as if the builders had simply vanished one day without warning. Danny monitored their communications and filed regular reports back to the Aurora's edge dot as evening approached. Something drew Danny's attention away from the main complex. About a kilometer from base camp stood a smaller crystal formation that the initial scans had overlooked. It was only about 20 meters tall and seemed almost insignificant compared to the massive structures the away team was exploring, but the small formation was calling to him. Danny could not explain the feeling, but something about its geometric patterns made his skin tingle and his heart race. He checked his communication schedule and realized he had 2 hours before the next required contact with the ship. That was plenty of time for a quick look at the smaller structure. Danny gathered basic equipment and left base camp, telling himself he was just satisfying curiosity. The walk across the planet's surface was easier than expected. The ground was hard and smooth, almost like walking on polished stone. Strange crystals grew from the surface in regular patterns that seemed to guide his steps toward the small formation. Up close, the structure was even more fascinating than it had appeared. From a distance, the crystal walls were perfectly transparent and seemed to contain swirling patterns of light that moved too slowly for human eyes to track. Danny walked around the formation and found an entrance that was exactly the right size for a human being. The corridor inside sloped downward into the heart of the structure. Emergency lights on Danny's equipment cast strange shadows on the crystal walls, creating the illusion that shapes were moving just outside his vision. The air inside the structure felt different, charged with energy that made his hair stand on end. The corridor opened into a circular chamber about 10 meters across. Floating geometric shapes hung in the air without any visible support, slowly rotating and changing configuration. Some looked like mathematical symbols, while others hurt Danny's eyes to examine too closely. In the center of the chamber stood what appeared to be a control interface covered with symbols that seemed to writhe and twist when he looked at them. Danny knew he should leave immediately and report his discovery to Captain Brooks. This was clearly some kind of alien technology, and he was not qualified to handle first contact situations. But something about the interface was calling to him with an urgency he could not ignore. He approached the control panel slowly, his heart pounding with excitement and fear. The symbols on its surface became clearer as he got closer, resolving into patterns that seemed almost familiar. His hand reached out toward the interface without conscious thought. The moment Danny's fingers touched the alien control surface, the world exploded into light and sound and impossible visions. His consciousness was ripped away from his body and hurled across vast distances of space and time. He saw images of beings that were not quite human, but not entirely alien either. Creatures of pure thought and energy who had mastered technologies that could reshape reality itself. The beings called themselves the Architects, and they had existed billions of years ago, when the universe was young. They had spread across countless galaxies, seeding worlds with life and leaving behind hidden gifts for the species that would come after them. Danny saw visions of Earth in its early days, when the Architects had walked among the primitive ancestors of humanity and left something precious hidden in their genetic code. The visions showed him that humanity was not alone in the universe, and never had been. The Architects had created thousands of species across the galaxies, each one carrying dormant abilities that would awaken when the time was right. Humanity's time was approaching, and the ancient installations like this one were keys to unlocking their true potential. But the visions also showed him danger. Something dark and hungry was stirring in the spaces between galaxies, something the architects had fought long ago and thought they had defeated. The enemy was returning, and only the inheritor species would be able to stop them. Danny's mind could not process the flood of information, and he felt his consciousness beginning to fragment. The last thing he remembered was falling to the crystal floor as alarms began sounding in his communication equipment. Then darkness claimed him, and he knew nothing more. Danny's first sensation was the taste of metal in his mouth and the feeling that his entire body was buzzing with electricity. He opened his eyes slowly and found himself lying in the medical bay of the Aurora's Edge. Dr. Martinez sat beside his bed, monitoring readings on several machines that were connected to his body with thin cables. "How long was I unconscious?" Danny asked, his voice coming out as a croak. 3 days, Dr. Martinez replied, her face showing relief mixed with concern. "Jake found you collapsed in that crystal structure. You were barely breathing, and your brain activity was unlike anything I have ever seen." Danny tried to sit up and immediately noticed that something was different. Every color seemed brighter and more vivid than before. He could hear conversations happening in other parts of the ship with perfect clarity. Most disturbing of all, he could sense the electromagnetic fields generated by all the electronic equipment around him. "What happened to me?" Danny asked, though part of him already knew the answer from the visions he had experienced. "Your brain has changed," Dr. Martinez said carefully. "The scans show activity in regions that were previously dormant. Some of the neural pathways appear to have been completely rewritten." Captain Brooks entered the medical bay with Jake Morris close behind her. Both of them looked at Danny with expressions that mixed curiosity with wariness. Danny could sense their emotions as clearly as if they were speaking their thoughts aloud. "Carter, we need to know exactly what happened in that structure," Captain Brooks said. "The entire complex lit up like a Christmas tree the moment Jake found you. The energy output increased by several thousand%, and it is still climbing." Danny tried to explain about the visions and the architects, but the words sounded crazy even to him. Ancient aliens who seeded the galaxy with life, dormant abilities hidden in human genetics, and warnings about some terrible enemy returning from beyond. The stars. He could see the skepticism in their faces as he spoke. "I know it sounds impossible," Danny said, "but I can prove that something has changed." He focused his attention on a stylus lying on the nearby medical tray. In the visions, the architects had shown him how to manipulate matter using focused thought and will. Danny concentrated on the stylus, and slowly it began to roll across the tray without anyone touching it. Jake stepped back with his hand moving toward his weapon. "What the hell was that?" "Telekinesis," Dr. Martinez whispered, her scientific mind immediately fascinated by what she was witnessing. "You moved that object with your mind." Captain Brooks remained calm, but Danny could sense her calculating the implications of what she had just seen. "What else can you do, Carter?" Danny was not sure himself. The knowledge from the visions was still fragmentary and confusing. He knew that his abilities were just beginning to emerge and would grow stronger with time and practice. But he also knew that using them carried risks he did not fully understand. "I can sense electromagnetic fields," Danny said. "I can hear conversations from across the ship, and I think I can do other things, but I am not sure what yet." Over the following hours, Danny's abilities continued to manifest in unexpected ways. During a routine briefing about their next exploration plans, his emotions spiked when Jake suggested that Danny should be sedated and taken back to Earth for study. Every electronic device in the briefing room overloaded simultaneously, filling the air with smoke and sparks. In the cafeteria, Danny accidentally crushed a metal tray when his concentration slipped while he was thinking about the hostile reception he was getting from most of the crew. The tray crumpled like paper, leaving clear finger impressions in the steel. Word of Danny's transformation spread quickly through the ship. Some crew members, like Dr. Martinez, were fascinated and wanted to study his abilities. Others, like Jake, viewed him as a potential threat that needed to be contained. Captain Brooks tried to maintain order, but Danny could sense that she was struggling with the decision of what to do with him. Danny retreated to his quarters, afraid of what he might accidentally do if his emotions got out of control again. He practiced meditation techniques that Dr. Martinez had taught him, trying to find some way to manage the flood of new sensations and abilities that were overwhelming his mind. During one of these meditation sessions, Danny found himself accessing more of the genetic memories left by the architects. The knowledge came in fragments and flashes of understanding rather than complete explanations. He learned that humanity had been designed as a backup plan, scattered across the galaxy with dormant abilities that would activate when ancient threats returned. The architects had faced an enemy they called the Devourers, entities that existed partially outside normal reality and consumed the life force of entire worlds. The war had raged across multiple galaxies before the architects found a way to banish their enemies to the spaces between dimensions. But the barriers were not permanent, and the Devourers would eventually find a way back. Danny's transformation was not random or accidental. The crystal structure had been specifically designed to activate the dormant genetic programming in humans who carried the right markers. He was the first, but he would not be the last. Other installations, like the one on Kepler 442b, were scattered across human space, waiting for the right people to find them. 3 days after Danny's awakening, long-range sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. Multiple contacts were approaching their position at speeds that should have been impossible. The objects were massive, larger than any ships in the human fleet, and they were moving faster than anything known to current science. Captain Brooks called an emergency meeting, and Danny knew from the genetic memories what was coming. The Devourers had found them. The activation of the Architect installation had sent out a signal across dimensions, alerting the ancient enemy that their prey species was finally awakening. "We are detecting 7 large objects approaching our position," Amy reported from the pilot station. "They will reach us in approximately 6 hours. "Are they responding to our communications?" Captain Brooks asked. "No response to any frequency we have tried," Danny said from his position at the communications console. "But Captain, I do not think they are here to talk." Danny could sense something wrong about the approaching ships even at this distance. They felt cold and hungry in a way that made his newly awakened abilities recoil in instinctive fear. The genetic memories were screaming warnings about entities that fed on life itself and left only dead worlds behind. "Captain, we need to leave immediately," Danny said urgently. "Those ships belong to something called the Devourers. They are the reason the architects built these installations and awakened humans like me." Jake Morris laughed harshly. "Now Carter thinks he is some kind of prophet. Captain, I recommend we continue with our mission and ignore his paranoid fantasies." But Dr. Martinez was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases, and they are definitely artificial constructs, not natural phenomena." Captain Brooks made the decision that would save their lives. "All hands prepare for immediate departure. Amy, get us away from this planet as fast as possible." The Auroras. Edge lifted off and engaged its faster-than-light drive, just as the first Devourer ships began materializing in the system. Danny watched through the sensors as the alien vessels phase-shifted in and out of normal reality, searching for the source of the signal that had drawn them here. They had escaped for now, but Danny knew this was only the beginning. The Devourers had found humanity and they would not stop until every human world was nothing but a lifeless husk. The race to save their species had just begun. The Aurora's Edge raced through space at maximum speed, but Danny knew they were not fast enough. The Devourer ships had locked onto their energy signature and were following them through faster than light. Travel like predators chasing wounded prey. Captain Brooks pushed the engines beyond their safe limits, but the alien vessels were gaining ground with every hour. "How is this possible?" Amy asked from the pilot station as she watched the pursuit on her sensors. "Nothing should be able to travel faster than our top speed." Danny accessed the genetic memories flowing through his enhanced mind and found fragments of information about Devourer technology. "They exist partially outside normal space-time," he explained. "That is why they can phase in and out of reality and move faster than our ships." Jake Morris turned from his tactical station with frustration written across his face. "Our weapons are useless against targets that can become incorporeal. How are we supposed to fight something we cannot even hit?" "The architects found a way," Danny said, though he was still struggling to understand the complex knowledge buried in his DNA. "Beings with awakened abilities can affect things that exist between dimensions. That is why they created the enhancement installations." 3 hours into their flight, the Devourer ships caught up with them. The aliens did not bother with communication or demands for surrender. They simply began attacking with weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. The Aurora's Edge shook violently as exotic energy beams passed through their shields. "If they were not there." "Shields are useless," Amy reported as another wave of attacks rocked the ship. "Those beams are ignoring our defensive systems completely." Captain Brooks tried evasive maneuvers, but the Devourer ships anticipated every move. They surrounded the human vessel in a formation that prevented escape and began charging what appeared to be a massive weapon system on their lead ship. Danny could sense the purpose of that weapon through his enhanced abilities. It was designed to drain the life force from every living being on the Aurora's Edge, leaving behind only empty husks. The same technology the Devourers used to consume entire worlds in their endless hunger. "Captain, I need to get to one of their ships," Annie said suddenly. Everyone on the bridge turned to stare at him. "That is suicide, Carter," Jake said. "Even if you could somehow reach their vessel, what could you possibly do against technology that advanced?" "My abilities are specifically designed to fight them," Danny replied, accessing more of the architect knowledge. "I can disrupt their connection to their home dimension and make them vulnerable to conventional weapons." Captain Brooks shook her head. "I will not send you on a suicide mission. There has to be another way." But Danny was already moving toward the emergency pod bay. The genetic memories were showing him exactly what he needed to do, though the process would likely kill him. The architects had designed their enhanced warriors to be weapons against the Devourers. Even if using those weapons came at the ultimate cost, Dr. Martinez caught up with him in the corridor. "Danny, this is madness. You barely understand your abilities, and you want to take on an entire alien fleet." "Those ships are going to kill everyone on this vessel," Danny replied as he entered the pod bay. "Then they are going to follow our course back to Earth and do the same thing to every human world. This is what I was made for, Helen." He climbed into an emergency pod and began the launch sequence. Through the small window, he could see the Devourer ships surrounding them, their dark hulls pulsing with malevolent energy. The lead vessel was almost finished charging its life-drain weapon. The pod launched just as the Devourers fired their weapon at the Aurora's Edge. Danny felt the terrible hunger of the beam as it passed near his small craft, seeking living minds to consume. His enhanced abilities allowed him to resist its pull, but he could sense the crew of his ship struggling against the alien assault. Danny piloted his pod directly toward the lead Devourer ship, using his enhanced perception to navigate through their defensive fire. The aliens seemed confused by his approach, as if they could not understand why a single human would attack their entire fleet. Their weapons passed through his pod harmlessly as they shifted into their phase state. The Devourer ship was enormous. Up close, easily 10 times the size of the Aurora's edge. Its hull was covered with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, similar to the architect installations, but twisted into shapes that suggested hunger and death. Danny found what appeared to be a docking bay and guided his pod inside. The interior of the alien ship was like nothing Danny had ever imagined. Corridors twisted through space in ways that defied geometry, leading to chambers that seemed larger inside than the ship itself could contain. The walls pulsed with veins of dark energy that fed the Devourer's interdimensional technology. Danny followed his enhanced senses through the maze of corridors toward the ship's power core. The genetic memories showed him that disrupting the phase generators would force the Devourers back into normal reality where human weapons could harm them. But the process required him to touch the alien technology directly. He found the power core in a chamber at the heart of the ship. It was a sphere of pure darkness, suspended in a web of energy conduits that extended into dimensions his human eyes could not perceive. Touching it would be like grasping a live electrical wire with his bare hands. Danny reached out with his telekinetic abilities and made contact with the alien power core. Immediately, his mind was flooded with the collective consciousness of the Devourer fleet. He felt their endless hunger for life energy and their satisfaction at finding a new species to consume. They had destroyed thousands of civilizations across multiple galaxies, and humanity would be just another meal. But Danny also felt their fear when they realized what he was doing. The Devourers remembered the architects and the war that had banished them from normal space. They had thought the threat was gone forever, but now they faced an awakened human with abilities they had hoped never to encounter again. Danny poured all of his enhanced power into disrupting the phase generators. The effort was like trying to hold back an ocean with his bare hands. The alien technology fought against him, sending waves of pain through his nervous system that threatened to burn out his brain. But he held on, knowing that the lives of everyone on the Aurora's edge depended on his success. The Devourer ship began to destabilize as its connection to interdimensional space weakened. Alarms sounded throughout the vessel as systems that had operated for millions of years suddenly began failing. The ship's hull became solid and vulnerable for the first time in eons. Through his enhanced senses, Danny felt the Aurora's edge opening fire with every weapon they had. The Devourer ship's shields, designed to deflect energy attacks from normal space, could not handle the human assault while Danny was disrupting their power systems from within. The alien vessel began to break apart under the combined assault. Danny felt the other Devourer ships retreating as they realized their lead ship was being destroyed by primitive human weapons. But before they fled, they sent out a signal that chilled Danny's blood. The signal was a message broadcast across dimensional barriers to the main Devourer fleet. It contained the location of Earth and information about humanity's awakening abilities. Danny realized with horror that by defeating one ship, he had doomed his entire species. The Devourer ship exploded around him. Danny felt his consciousness scattered across multiple dimensions. He should have died in that moment, but his enhanced abilities kept his mind intact, even as his body was torn apart by forces beyond human comprehension. When he regained awareness, Danny found himself floating in space near the wreckage of the alien vessel. His emergency suit had somehow survived the explosion, and the Aurora's edge was moving to pick him up. But the victory felt hollow because he knew what was coming. The main Devourer invasion fleet had been alerted to humanity's existence and location. Soon thousands of their ships would be heading toward Earth, bringing with them the end of human civilization. The race to save his species had become a desperate struggle against impossible odds. Danny recovered in the medical bay while the Aurora's Edge raced toward Earth at maximum speed. Dr. Martinez ran constant tests on his condition, amazed that he had survived the destruction of the Devourer ship. His enhanced abilities had somehow protected his consciousness during the explosion, though his body showed signs of exposure to energies that should have killed him instantly. The invasion fleet will reach Earth in approximately 3 weeks, Captain Brooks announced during an emergency briefing. Our fastest ships could not evacuate even a fraction of the population in that time. How many ships are we talking about? Jake asked, though his voice suggested he already feared the answer. Danny accessed the genetic memories that were becoming clearer each day. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The Devourers travel in massive fleets that can consume entire star systems in a matter of days. The crew fell silent as they contemplated the scale of the threat facing humanity. Their single ship had barely survived an encounter with 7 Devourer vessels. Earth's entire defense fleet would be helpless against thousands of the alien ships. There is another option, Danny said slowly. The architects built other installations, like the one on Kepler 442b. If I can reach them and awaken more humans with the right genetic markers, we might have a chance. Dr. Martinez pulled up a star chart showing human colonial space. There are several systems with energy signatures similar to what we detected on Kepler 442b, but reaching all of them would take months. We do not have months, Captain Brooks replied. We barely have weeks. Danny studied the star chart and found 3 systems that were relatively close to their current position. Each one showed the telltale energy patterns of architect installations. If they moved quickly and efficiently, they might be able to reach all 3 before the Devourer fleet arrived at Earth. Change course for the Proxima colony, Danny said. There is definitely an architect site in that system, and I can sense other humans there with dormant abilities. The Aurora's Edge altered course toward the Proxima system, pushing their engines to dangerous levels to maintain maximum speed. During the journey, Danny worked with Dr. Martinez to understand the awakening, process better. The transformation that had changed him could be guided and controlled instead of being left to chance. They reached Proxima Colony after 2 days of hard travel. The settlement was built around mining operations that extracted rare minerals from the system's asteroid belt. Danny's enhanced senses immediately detected the architect installation hidden beneath the colony's main administrative complex. Colony. Administrator Kevin Walsh was skeptical when Danny explained the situation. Ancient aliens and interdimensional invaders. Do you realize how crazy that sounds? Crazy or not, we can prove it, Danny replied. He demonstrated his telekinetic abilities by lifting several objects around Walsh's office without touching them. The same power that changed me is available to others with the right genetic patterns. Danny could sense that Walsh carried the genetic markers for enhancement. The awakening process would be easier this time because Danny understood how to guide it. Within hours, Walsh was exhibiting his own enhanced abilities, primarily the power to manipulate matter at the molecular level. This is incredible, Walsh said as he transformed a piece of ordinary metal into a complex crystalline structure with just his thoughts. I can feel the atomic bonds and change them directly. But there was no time to marvel at their new abilities. The Aurora's Edge departed for the next system with Walsh aboard, leaving the Proxima colony to prepare for the coming invasion. Danny hoped that more awakened humans would be enough to make a difference when the Devourers arrived. The second stop was the new Terra agricultural colony, where they found Patricia Young working as a mining engineer in the system's outer planets. Her awakening triggered abilities related to energy manipulation, allowing her to generate protective fields that could deflect attacks from multiple dimensions. I can see the energy patterns now, Patricia explained as she practiced with her. New powers. The Devourers exist partially in spaces between normal reality, but these fields can affect them no matter what dimension they are occupying. The third awakening took place at the Frontier Station trading post, where agricultural specialist Ryan Clark developed enhanced perception that allowed him to see across multiple dimensions simultaneously. His abilities would be crucial for targeting enemies that could phase in and out of normal space. The Devourers are not just ships, Ryan reported after his transformation. They are living entities that use technology to extend their consciousness across dimensional barriers. I can see their true forms, even when they are phase-shifted. With 4 awakened humans working together, they began to discover that their abilities could be combined in ways that created effects greater than the sum of their parts. When Kevin reshaped matter, while Patricia channeled energy through it, and Ryan provided multidimensional targeting data, they could create weapons that existed partially outside normal reality. We are starting to understand how the architects fought the Devourers, Danny explained as they practiced their combined techniques. Individual abilities are powerful, but working together makes us exponentially more effective. But the transformations were taking a toll on Danny's body. Each awakening he guided required him to channel vast amounts of architect energy through his nervous system. Dr. Martinez warned him that continuing at this pace could burn out his brain completely. "I can handle a few more awakenings," Danny insisted, though he could feel his body beginning to fail. "We need as many enhanced humans as possible before the invasion fleet arrives." The Aurora's Edge raced back toward Earth, gathering intelligence about the approaching Devourer fleet along the way. Long-range sensors detected the massive alien armada moving through space like a dark cloud that consumed everything in its path. The fleet was even larger than Danny had feared, consisting of hundreds of massive ships supported by thousands of smaller vessels. As they approached Earth's solar system, they received desperate communications from the planet's defense forces. The Devourer fleet had already been detected, and Earth's military was mobilizing every available ship. But everyone knew that conventional weapons would be useless against enemies that could phase out of normal reality. "The entire planet is surrounded by a dimensional barrier," Ryan reported as his enhanced perception analyzed the Devourer fleet's deployment. "They are using it to amplify their life-draining technology. If we do not stop them soon, every human on Earth will be dead within hours." Danny looked at his small team of awakened humans and felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. 4 enhanced individuals against an invasion fleet that had conquered thousands of worlds. The odds were impossible, but they were humanity's only hope. "There is one more option," Danny said as he accessed the deepest levels of architect knowledge buried in his genetic memory. "There is an installation on Earth itself, hidden beneath the Antarctic ice. It was designed as a last resort weapon that could banish the Devourers permanently." "What kind of weapon?" Captain Brooks asked. "The kind that requires a conscious mind to operate it," Danny replied grimly. "And the process will likely kill whoever activates it." Kevin, Patricia, and Ryan exchanged glances before nodding their agreement. They had all accepted the possibility of death when they chose to undergo the awakening process. If sacrificing their lives could save humanity, they were prepared to make that choice. The Aurora's Edge descended toward Earth as the final battle for humanity's survival began. In the distance, the Devourer fleet tightened its grip around the planet, preparing to drain the life from billions of human beings. Danny and his team were running out of time to save their species from extinction. The Aurora's Edge dropped into Earth's atmosphere under heavy fire from the Devourer fleet. The alien ships had surrounded the planet with a dimensional barrier that trapped every human on the surface while slowly draining their life force. Danny could feel the collective agony of billions of people as their energy was pulled away by the hungry invaders. Earth defense forces are engaging the enemy, but their weapons are having no effect. Amy reported from the pilot station as she dodged. Phase-shifted energy beams. We are losing ships faster than we can count them. Through the viewport, Danny watched human vessels explode against the Devourer blockade. Brave pilots and crews were dying by the thousands, but their conventional weapons could not touch enemies that existed partially outside normal reality. Only awakened humans with architect abilities had any hope of fighting back. The Antarctic installation is directly beneath the Ross Ice Shelf, Danny said, accessing the genetic memories that were burning through his mind. But we need to break through the Devourer perimeter first. Kevin Walsh used his molecular manipulation abilities to transform the Aurora's edge hull into materials that could resist interdimensional energy attacks. Patricia Young generated protective fields around the ship that deflected the worst of the alien weapons. Ryan Clark provided targeting data that allowed them to navigate through the chaos of the space battle. But even with their enhanced abilities, the small ship was badly outmatched. The Devourer fleet consisted of hundreds of massive vessels, each one larger than Earth's biggest space stations. Their weapons tore holes in space itself, and their dimensional barrier was growing stronger with every passing minute. I am reading massive energy spikes from the enemy fleet, Dr. Martinez announced. They are preparing to activate some kind of planetary weapon. Danny's enhanced senses detected the purpose of the weapon, and his blood ran cold. The Devourers were about to drain the life force from every living thing on Earth simultaneously. Once the process began, nothing would be able to stop it. Humanity would be extinct within hours. The Aurora's edge broke through the upper atmosphere and raced toward the Antarctic continent. Behind them, the Devourer fleet began powering up, their ultimate weapon, while human defense forces threw themselves uselessly against the alien ships. Danny could feel the countdown to extinction beginning. They landed on the ice shelf near the coordinates that the genetic memories had provided. Beneath kilometers of frozen water lay an architect installation that had been dormant for millions of years. Danny led his team across the ice toward a depression in the surface that marked the entrance to the ancient complex. The installation is massive, Ryan reported, as his enhanced perception analyzed the structure hidden below. It extends deep into the Earth's crust and connects to power sources I cannot even identify. They found the entrance concealed beneath a layer of ice that appeared natural, but was actually composed of crystalline materials, similar to the structures on Kepler 442b. Kevin used his abilities to reshape the barrier and reveal a tunnel that led down into the heart of the installation. The ancient complex was unlike anything they had encountered before. Corridors twisted through impossible geometries, while chambers contained machinery that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Everything was perfectly preserved and waiting for the moment when humanity would need to use the architect's final weapon. The control chamber is at the center of the installation, Danny said, as he followed the genetic maps burned into his DNA. But the weapon requires multiple conscious minds to operate safely. One person trying to control it alone would be torn apart by the energies involved. They reached the central chamber and found themselves in a vast spherical room dominated by a crystalline interface that rose from the floor like a twisted tree. The walls were covered with displays that showed the status of the dimensional barrier around Earth and the advancing Devourer weapon. The planetary life drain will begin in less than 30 minutes, Patricia announced as she studied the alien readings. After that, nothing will be able to save the people on Earth. Danny approached the central interface and placed his hands on its crystalline surface. Immediately his mind was connected to vast computational systems of the architect installation. He could see the dimensional structure of the Devourer fleet and understand how their technology worked. Installation contained a weapon that could open a rift between dimensions and banish the Devourers back to the void where they belonged. but operating it required precise control over energies that existed outside normal spacetime. One mistake could tear apart the solar system instead of just removing the invaders. "I need all of you to link your minds with mine," Danny said as the interface began responding to his enhanced abilities. "Together we might be able to control the weapon without destroying ourselves in the process." Kevin, Patricia, and Ryan placed their hands on secondary interfaces around the chamber. Dr. Martinez and the other crew members from the Aurora's Edge joined them, adding their human consciousness to the collective mind that would guide the ancient weapon. But even as they prepared to activate the installation, Danny could feel his body beginning to fail. The constant use of his enhanced abilities had pushed his nervous system beyond its limits. The genetic memories warned him that he might not survive the process of firing the weapon. Captain Rooks and Jake Morris took positions at the remaining interfaces, despite having no enhanced abilities themselves. "We are all in this together," Captain Brooks said firmly. "If humanity is going to survive, we do it as one people." Amy Rodriguez and the rest of the crew followed their example. Soon every human in the chamber was connected to the Architect weapon system. Their combined consciousness, focused on the single goal of saving their species from extinction. Danny felt their minds merge with his as he activated the ancient weapon. The installation drew power from sources deep within the Earth and began charging systems that had been dormant for millions of years. Around the planet, the Devourer fleet detected the energy buildup and tried to locate its source. The weapon fired in a burst of energy that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. A rift opened in space near the Devourer fleet, revealing the dark void between realities where the aliens had been banished long ago. The dimensional portal began pulling the alien ships toward it with irresistible force. The Devourers fought against the pull, but their technology was designed for attacking other dimensions, not for resisting banishment to the void. One by one, their massive ships were dragged through the rift and disappeared into the space between worlds. The effort of controlling the weapon was burning out the enhanced abilities of every awakened human in the chamber. Danny felt his consciousness fragmenting as energies beyond imagination flowed through his mind. But he held on, knowing that humanity's survival depended on completing the banishment. The last Devourer ship disappeared through the dimensional rift, just as the weapon systems began overloading. Danny used the last of his strength to seal the portal and prevent anything from following the aliens back into normal space. The installation shut down as its ancient systems finally reached their limits. Danny collapsed to the crystal floor. His enhanced abilities burned out, but his mind intact. Around him, the other awakened humans were unconscious but alive. The genetic memories were fading from his thoughts, leaving behind only normal human consciousness. Outside the installation, Earth's skies were clear for the first time in days. The Devourer fleet was gone, and the dimensional barrier around the planet had collapsed. Humanity had survived its first encounter with the ancient enemy and emerged forever changed. In the months that followed, the awakening process spread naturally to millions of humans around the world. The genetic triggers that the architects had planted in human DNA were finally activating after millions of years of dormancy. Humanity began developing technologies based on architect principles and preparing for their role as inheritors of an ancient legacy. Danny became the first director of the Human Enhancement Program, helping others learn to control their awakened abilities safely. He was no longer the weakest member of any team, but he never forgot the lesson that true strength came from working together rather than standing alone. The Devourers were gone for now, banished back to the void between dimensions. But Danny knew they would eventually find another way back to normal space. When that day came, humanity would be ready to face them, as the architects had always intended, not as victims, but as guardians of life itself, looking up at the stars. From his office window, Danny could sense other young humans across the galaxy, discovering that they too carried the seeds of incredible power. The age of human expansion into the cosmos had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again.